Chair recognizes Mr. LaTurner from Kansas.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you all for being here. When President Biden introduced his new ESG rule earlier this year, allowing fund managers to invest America's retirement savings into ESG funds without their knowledge, the House and the Senate took bipartisan action to block this reckless proposal from moving forward. Unfortunately, the White House didn't get the message. President Biden used the first veto of his tenure to give large financial institutions the ability to advance his political agenda, which the vast majority of Americans would never endorse at the ballot box through forced investment, skirting due process. The truth is, most Kansans don't want any part of President Biden's ESG agenda, much less with their hard-earned retirement savings at stake. And why would they? The ESG movement forces financial entities and investors to ignore real-world fiscal value for the sake of pie-in-the-sky climate change initiatives. Does a bank comply with ESG practices or prioritize as they should, delivering value to their stakeholders? Energy was the sole sector in the S&P 500 to rise last year, but ESG-aligned funds, which spurn fossil fuel companies by design, unanimously underperformed the S&P 500. Despite this reality, my colleagues across the aisle seem to be just fine with policy which conditions the behaviors of our financial institutions upon arbitrarily contrived ESG scores and puts woke climate change policies over the financial security of hard-working Americans. Mr. Moore, the Census Bureau estimates 25% of Kansans will be 60 or older by 2030. Retirement funds constitute nearly half of mutual fund assets nationwide. Can you briefly elaborate upon the financial liabilities my constituents' golden year savings are exposed to under the Biden administration's ESG standards?
Congressman, I outlined in my testimony that the preponderance of the studies show that ESG investing reduces investor return. It reduces the value of the fund. Not hugely, but it does. And so someone who's put a whole lifetime savings, maybe $250,000 or $500,000 in, over their course of their 30 or 40 years of work, you're talking about reducing, perhaps $10,000 or $20,000 the value of their lifetime savings. And that's a real cost to retirees. Now, I think one of the things that's frustrated me a little bit about this hearing is that we keep talking past each other. I don't think anybody in this room is against ESG investing. I mean, are you? Are you? We're just saying that you can't force people or have them in ESG funds when they don't even know about it, when it's being done without their knowledge. And that's what a lot of these firms are doing. And that's what the Biden administration requirements are doing. They're basically saying you have to get a lower return on your investment. And that's look, I have a big problem because when I talk to clients, people who are clients with these firms, they say, look, I don't want to save the world. I don't want to save the whales. I just want to have a good retirement income. I worked my whole life. And that's what they deserve. And frankly, these firms do have a fiduciary duty to provide them the highest return possible.
I'm going to stick with you. Two companies control over 90% of all proxy advisory services. Do you harbor any antitrust concerns over their combined market share?
I'm sorry, say that. I missed that.
That's okay. I'm talking about antitrust concerns over combined market share. When we're talking about Glass Lewis and ISS control over 90% of all proxy advisory services. Yeah, and anyone can comment on that if they'd like.
Well, I don't believe in antitrust, but I do believe we need a market solution to this. We need to have another firm out there that presents a more free market review. When we graded the top 50 money management firms, but we also graded the, it was ISS and what's the other one?
Glass Lewis.
Glass Lewis. They got a D- and an F-. They are recommending to firms that they vote for all of this ESG stuff. So we probably need an alternative because they're not really advising these firms in a way that maximizes shareholder value.
To your personal knowledge, are climate change activists using the threat of political action to pressure banks from lending to certain energy and industrial sectors like the fossil fuel industry?
Here's the point about this. The U.S. economy cannot operate without fossil fuels. So the idea that we're going to, eliminate fossil fuels over the next 20 or 30 or 40 years is extraordinarily economically dangerous. And I mentioned earlier that, there's a state that's trying to do that. That's California. And California has had brownouts, blackouts, their energy future looks really, even my friend here in Texas, you have problems because of some of this, you know, these environmental initiatives that are moving away from not just oil and gas, but nuclear power. I mean, that makes no sense. And by the way, the single factor that has reduced carbon emissions the most is not this Inflation Reduction Act. The thing that is, by an order of magnitude, that has reduced carbon emissions has been shale gas. Shale gas is like a wonder fuel. It has dramatically reduced greenhouse gas emissions.
Gentleman's time has expired.
Thank you. Yield back, Mr. Chair.